For our first project today, I found this canvas sign at a yard sale this summer. I paid $1 for it, and I'm going to give it 2 coats of Paint Couture's 2-in-1 Premium Primer in white. This is going to seal in our surface, prepare it for paint. I did have, like on the first coat, I did have some bleed through. So I'm so glad that I took this step first, because if I hadn't, it would have bled through my paint and just would have been a whole process to go back and do it over again. And I'm really loving this frame. I'm going to leave it just how it is. Our sealer is dry. Now I'm taking the color Casement by Fusion. This is a mineral paint. It has both a primer, a sealer, and it is a self-leveler. I'm going to give this 1 coat, and then I'm going to let that dry as well. We're going to do some decoupaging next, and it's always important to have a light surface, preferably white, underneath your decoupage paper, because it really gives your design the best chance to shine, and it keeps those nice colors vibrant. Although I do know my friend Gwen has mentioned that when you're decoupaging with calendar pages, it can actually be helpful to use a darker color underneath. That way the numbers and the lines from the back of the calendar don't show through. So there's just a little tip for you in case you didn't know that about decoupaging with calendars. Our paint is nice and dry, and now I'm going to go in with a nice heavy layer of Mod Podge. I'm using a glossy finish, but honestly, it doesn't matter whether you use a glossy or a matte for this part of the project. I'm just going to give the entire surface a good layer, and then I'm going to let it dry completely before moving on to the next step. Next, I got this beautiful paper in my July Sonnets Makers box, which was actually her 2-year anniversary of the box. And honestly, when I first saw it, I thought I probably wouldn't use it and would end up gifting it to someone, just because I'm not really into the whole steampunk style. But since then, I started selling on Whatnot, as a lot of you know, and that's really given me the opportunity to create things that I normally wouldn't, necessarily make for myself. And, now I can experiment with different styles, list them, and hopefully they'll find the perfect home with someone who loves them. So I have my paper placed right where I want it. I want a little bit of the clock showing. So I moved my bird off to the side just a little bit. And this is a robin, by the way. Then I'll start pressing the paper using my nails to tightly push it up against the sides of the frame. And I'm using my little scalpel here to carefully cut the excess away. And I did forget to mention before I started trimming my paper that Mod Podge was completely dry. Now that I have everything trimmed up, I have my parchment paper and my mini heat press, and we're going to use the iron method. What this does is it reactivates that Mod Podge underneath, allowing that paper to really fuse into the surface. It also gives you a beautiful, smooth finish and helps get rid of any wrinkles or bubbles. This is definitely a favorite decoupage method for a lot of creators, and it's really one of my favorites too. But I do like to mix things up, so you'll see me use several different decoupage methods throughout my projects. And really take your time on this step. You don't need to rush. Just make sure you get all along the sides real well, and really make sure that this is fused together nicely. Next, I have Debbie's DIY liquid patina, and we're going to seal in our design. This will give it a nice protective finish, so that way over the years it can easily be wiped down without, having to worry about staining or damaging the paper. And that liquid patina has a nice matte finish, which is perfect for this project. Our liquid patina is nice and dry, and I could see just a little bit of that white paint peeking through around the sides. So I decided to take my Tim Holtz Distress ink and the walnut stain and a small artist brush and really work that down into all the cracks and just blend it out. Not only does that cover up the white, but it also gives us a beautiful little shadow around the edges that really helps our design pop too. That ink was a little too dry. Luckily, I had this larger one I hadn't opened yet, and I'm going to go over some of the numbers in the area around his hat. Here is our Robin, and I think he is just so beautiful. I know this is a style, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not normally drawn to, but I'm really happy with how he turned out. I love to know what you think. All right, this video is in collaboration with my friend Gwen from At Home with Gigi. She started Paper to Project a few months ago, and the fun thing about this collaboration is that you can create any type of project using any type of paper. Gwen asked me to be her guest host this month, and of course, I couldn't say no. She's one of my favorites, and we've actually been friends since shortly after starting my YouTube channel. This is an open playlist, so be sure to check out everyone. I will have the playlist link in my description box. For our second project, I thrifted this box and decided to give it 2 coats of the color Raw Silk, and that's by Fusion. And once that was nice and dry, I went ahead and added a coat of Mod Podge right to the top. And I have to apologize, guys. I have been out of the editing game for over a month now, and I completely spaced filming the box before I painted it. I'm just I'm trying so hard to get back into the swing of things and just find my baseline again. So just please bear with me. Anyway, this beautiful paper came in my Rehatch Designs box. My Mod Podge is nice and dry. I have my parchment paper. And once again, we're going to use the iron-on method for this project as well. And just so you know, you don't need a mini heat press to do this method. You can use, just a regular household iron. It works just as well. Then I'll use my finger sander to remove the excess. Now we're going to have a little fun with some paint inlays, and I'm using IOD's Floriography paint inlay. Honestly, I can't remember when this one came out, but I'm going to cut away the designs that I want to use and give my paper a light mist of water just until it's nice and wet. For my medium, I'm using Debbie's DIY liquid patina. If you don't have liquid patina, you can absolutely use paint instead. I would recommend using a chalk paint rather than one that has a built-in primer and sealer. In my experience, those types of paints can cause the paper to almost fuse into the surface, and then when you go to remove your inlay, it tends to rip the paper and stay on your design. But once the inlay has dried, it turns like a nice opaque. I'm going to spritz it again, give it about 15-30 seconds, gently wipe away that excess water with a damp rag, and then slowly pull back on that carrier well, it's not a carrier sheet. It's just, well, maybe it is. I don't know. And just pull back on that to reveal the design. I'm definitely not looking for perfection here. More often than not, I actually prefer my designs to have that imperfect aged finish. That's one of the things I love about paint inlays. You don't always get, like a perfect transfer. But I do have to say, when you do get one that transfers over perfectly, it's pretty satisfying. Paint Couture created this specific product for paint inlays. It's an acrylic top coat. I have both the flat and the satin. For this, I'm using the flat. I adapt away anything that puddled, let it dry, and look at how this came out. I think it turned out absolutely beautiful, and this sold the next day in my Whatnot show for $31. What do you think? For our last project, I have some packing paper that you can pick up at the Dollar General, and I'm using the Flurry stamp from IOD's new 2026 winter release. I'm going to ink it up really well with IOD's Stone Gray ink. I'm using both designs from the set, starting with the little dotted design first, and then I'm going to go over it with the snowflakes. I apologize because I missed some of the footage. I needed to clean out my phone, and of course, while I was filming, my storage decided it was completely full and stopped recording on me. Next, I'm using another stamp from the new release called Gingerbread Lane. For this one, I'm using IOD's black ink, and I'm just gonna have some fun creating a little scene with the houses and the trees and some of the animals. I like to work with a carrier sheet still attached and just make sure I keep one hand on my stamp at all times. It really helps keep everything from shifting while I'm stamping and makes it so much easier to build up my little scene exactly where I want it. Next, I have these oval wood rounds. I believe I got it from Whippoorwill Charm. I'll be sure to link that. I have my cling wrap. I didn't bother paint these. And I'm going to place, I have my paper to cut the wood round. I'm going to place my paper right on top of that. And then my parchment paper. I have my mini heat press. This took me quite a few minutes. I want to say probably about 5 minutes going over this because you want to get that cling wrap to fuse onto the surface and the paper. And so if you recreate this, be sure to take your time. I actually wear a mask for this because, I'm heating plastic, and this definitely isn't a method I would use all the time because of that, but I really wanted to try something different. Sometimes it's just fun to experiment with different techniques and just kind of gets those creative juices flowing again, in my opinion. It was really easy just to pull away the excess once it was melted. I did cut out quite a bit of the process because, as I mentioned, it took several minutes to get everything adhered really well. And I figured you probably didn't want to sit here and just watch me do the same thing over and over and over again. But once I was done that, I sealed them in with some Mod Podge. and I did give them 2 coats. Next, I'm using this really cool ornate mold that I found on Amazon and some Jovi air dry clay. I'm going to make a total of 4 of these embellishments, one for the top and one for the bottom. And I'm using some Dollar Tree wood glue with these as well. I actually had a few subscribers mention Jovi air dry clay to me, so I wanted to give it a try, but unfortunately, I didn't care for it. I found it very dry to work with, and it had quite a bit of cracking. Um, and that was actually the reason why I set the third piece aside, because I had used a different mold on that one and just wasn't happy at all with how it turned out. So as you can see here, I dusted my mold with some cornstarch and I worked that clay into my hands and I pushed it into the mold to get it nice and flat. I don't typically have to use the little roller that people often use for clay. However, I did have to use it for this one just because it was just so dry and sticky. Um, and I really thought this was going to be good, because a lot of times when my subscribers mention something more than once, it's usually because, people like it. So I went to buy one and it was cheaper to buy a 4-pack. So I got a 4-pack. So now I'm stuck with all this clay that I don't like. My clay has a nice crust on them that didn't take long at all. And I took Dollar General's black chalk paint. This is such a nice chalk paint. It's very matte and it dries really quickly. And it only costed $3.50. I'm going to give these just a couple of coats. The second coat is mainly to make sure that I touch up and get down in the cracks. And then I brought it along the sides here just to kind of frame it in. And then once that dries, I have Paint Couture's bronze metallic paint, and I'm going to work that into all those details and low points. And then I'm going to use a baby wipe to wipe back the excess. And that leaves us with this beautiful dark aged gold effect and really brings out all the definition in those molds. And because we decoupage the surface and it's nice and sealed, if that metallic paint, gets where we don't want it, I can easily wipe away the excess. And I'm also bringing a little bit of that bronze around the sides to tie everything together. Off camera, I added some jute hangers to the back, and this is how they turned out. I think they're so beautiful. I really love the contrast between that soft grayish paper, the black and gray tones in the stamp design, and the black in the molds. I think everything just works together so nicely. If you enjoyed these projects, you know what to do. Give me a thumbs up and let me know down in the comments what you think of these projects today. Be sure to check out the full Paper to Project playlist. I'll have that along with everything that I used linked in the description box. Lastly, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss another video from me. Thank you for spending time with me today. Until the next one, bye.